Dear friends of the Germanische Heilkunde, my name is Giovanna Conti. I am a pianist and a music teacher and one of the 3 people appointed by Dr. Hammer as professors of the Sandefjord University for the Germanic New Medicine, Art and Lifestyle. This university doesn't exist today. However, the research on the 5 biological laws and their diffusion to humankind, along with their application in music and art, have never stopped. So, as co-owner, together with Dr. Hammer, of the copyright on the archaic melody, and of course also as a woman, I've been asked today to put Dr. Hammer's perspective on life and way of being into context, which touches on themes that can be viewed as controversial, especially in the so-called more advanced societies. My modest intervention here is then to help people better understand Dr. Hammer's GHK perspective. And no need to say that it developed and was documented due to deep and extensive observations of how the psyche behaves, and it also explains and illustrates specific cellular activities seen in thousands of patients. But first I have to introduce some general key concepts. As we can easily recognize, our society is now suffering from the great plague of divide et impera, divide and conquer. Today more than ever we are experiencing a fragmented social fabric disguised as global society where every difference is pretended to be accepted, but in reality serves as a label that instigates fragmentation and division. I believe we are witnessing the greatest fragmentation of all time, fragmentation of people, of knowledge, and the fragmentation of ideals, values, and truth. In short, we have created sites that purposely keep us divided, while the schizophrenic narration and story being fed to us is leading us to a unique way of thinking. But let's now speak of science, of Dr. Hammer and his great respect and comprehension for humanity. Let's speak of his irreducible faith in the meaningfulness of life's processes, which may be contrary to what we have been told. Then it is our natural inclination towards a sense of generosity, and even though polarized, our need to belong, that each individual's mindset tends to identify with one or the other side of this, which is what I call the Great Schism. On one hand, we find the labels feminist, left, progressive, liberal, and on the other hand, we find the labels conservative, right, orthodox, or even radical, and conspiracist, and so on. But where is the truth? And more importantly, what is the truth? Well, Dr. Hammer taught us that the truth and the freedom with it can only be pursued through knowledge, more precisely with the precious help of the 5 biological natural laws inherent in all living beings. After observing how exquisite biological programs get triggered too frequently in modern demanding lifestyles, causing so many health issues, Dr. Hammer started wondering, is our freedom a reality, or is it a concept artificially built on polarized assumptions? Why would our psyche brain organs suffer from so many diseases if we were serving a path that is consistent with our biological way of functioning? I invite you to ask yourself this question. Is our idea of how we should live built on real knowledge, or is it boasted by social systems that prefer not to encourage natural-based lifestyles? for political, economical reasons that often negatively affect our health. Those who had the privilege of knowing Dr. Hammer in person, as well as those who had the opportunity of reading his numerous books, have no doubt about his being completely free from any kind of political or religious orientation, despite the different labels his detractors tried to give him. But these labels unstick as soon as you understand the scientific basis of his discoveries. So simply due to a lack of GHK information, perhaps not everyone knows how Dr. Hammer built his vision. First of all, it must be said that Dr. Hammer earned 2 degrees, one in medicine and one in theology, from the Tübingen University, and this happened in the years before the heat of this dialectic of opposites. I mean, when medical doctors were still trained to cure without political interference. In the past, the physician touched you, palpated you, and smelled you. Nowadays, maybe due to fearing a complaint for contagion, the physician simply writes a prescription which instantly puts money into the pockets of pharmaceutical companies. That said, please know that the Tübingen University is one of the most venerable universities in Europe, where people like Kepler and Hegel graduated, just to give you an idea of its prominence. Dr. Hammer's inner wisdom and guidance came straight from the ancient Greek, Latin and Sanskrit texts that he was able to read in their original languages. This provided him with the spatial capability of reading behind languaging craftily created by the medical establishment. But first of all, Dr. Hammer was an authentic and unique person, which allowed him to become a true scientist with a widened vision of life's processes. And actually, I'm here today because music, read from the perspective of the 5 biological laws, demonstrates these same life's processes undoubtedly. At some point, as a man of action, gifted with a high sense of civic responsibility, Dr. Hammer saw the need of putting his pure knowledge into a form that would help our society evolve for the best, and by best, I mean according to the way our species have been evolving for millennia. Hence, his decision to found in 2009 the aforementioned Sandefjord University for the GNM Art and Lifestyle. Each time Dr. Hammer expressed himself with statements that could be even seen as controversial on the personal level, he was actually grounded in his 5 biological natural laws. These laws were synthesized together due to his wide background of knowledge, research and experience. His laws describe exactly how our psyche-brain organ system reacts with certain behaviors to the stimuli of the environment. The laws even describe how we interact with the movement of the planets, like the day-night or sun-moon rhythm, which is the basis of the second biological law. Now, one of the master keys for putting psyche-brain organ behaviors into context is given by Dr. Hammer's discoveries about the fluctuation of both male and female hormones, whose change produces different behaviors both in humans and in animals. And if you want to understand our current modern society, including our modern diseases, you need to know how and why our hormone levels change. That's why Dr. Hammer's ideal society is primarily based on the respect for the natural pattern of hormones, whose fluctuations occur as the meaningful response to extraordinary events. And we know hormonal fluctuations occur following sexual and territorial conflicts. In our current society, our hormonal fluctuations are still a meaningful response, but to our modern non-biological lifestyles versus our natural development. So, continuing with hormonal fluctuations, Dr. Hammer was strongly against the birth control pill because this changed the hormonal status of the female and can produce serious and unwanted symptoms unrelated to pregnancy. In his long career, Dr. Hammer observed so many problems caused by a hormonally unbalanced status. Furthermore, more anthropologically speaking, he observed that a normal hormone status makes healthier societies, such as some societies of the past, and for example by the indigenous. All these experiences together made Dr. Hammer develop a higher respect for the differentiation of roles within the clans, the family, and society. But modern women may believe that Dr. Hammer's perspective undermines a woman's total agency on their body, their freedom of taking precautions and living their lives the way they plan to do. This is totally understandable because at the beginning of my study in GHK, when Dr. Hammer first spoke to me about this subject, I myself raised the same objections. But the deeper I knew him and dived into his discovery, and the better I observed nature and learned the work of ethologists and anthropologists, the more I understood how Dr. Hammer reached his vision. And it was a vision of a society where, for example, a woman could dedicate most of her time to raising her children, accepting support and protection by her male partner if this is what she desired to do, of course. As an example, I want to refer to mammals and even birds. The male explores the area where the family is going to search for food and then keeps on surveilling the environment for as long as necessary, always protecting his family. Would you then label this male bird as an oppressor or chauvinist? Let's now look at why heads of ancient families used to sit at the head of the table. We have maybe too quickly dismissed this as a chauvinistic attitude, while in reality this tradition came from the need of surveilling the entrance. In fact, the table in ancient houses was placed in a way that allowed those sitting at it to keep an eye on any possible threat for the fireside. No, I'm not nostalgic for the days gone by. On the contrary, I'm fascinated by progress and what the challenges of the future would be. I also adore fashion trends and the latest in shoes. But I believe that if we really want to meaningfully evolve and not simply change for change's sake, we need to give a scientifically correct interpretation of our innermost nature and behaviors to prevent another witch hunt era dominated by a false narrative. So, working with Dr. Hammer, I soon realized that his opinion was authentically respectful towards sex differences. It was only after deep study of the new understanding of how hormones work, of how women and women serve ancestral SBS programs despite our modern culturally held beliefs, that Dr. Hammer developed his idea for society. He envisioned a society where both females and males may choose to exercise their right to live according to their biological codes, respecting the way their psyche, brain, organ functions. Historically, living in accordance with nature, women would not have had so many periods because we would have been pregnant or nursing, and we would have been supported by our entire community in this. This doesn't mean that every woman starting from today has to go back to the same life's conditions as 2000 years ago. Even if we wanted that, we couldn't possibly create a society that supports such a total biological lifestyle on any mass scale. This is because our artificial habits have been somehow integrated into our processes of evolution due to our adaptability, for better or for worse. invite you to become conscious of the biological reality that still lives in each one of us, even if it has been less and less expressed. I'm talking about the reality supported by our psyche, our brain, our organs, because only with a widened consciousness of this reality can we accurately choose a future more closely aligned with nature. So it is advantageous if we can look at our biological past without judging it from a solely mental point of view and instead consider our past from the context of Mother Nature's rules. This way, I feel, as Dr. Hammer felt, we would successfully express those still present innermost desires that today are labeled as just old-fashioned. Therefore, in Dr. Hammer's idea of a society, there's no obligation at all except for the governments, which have the ethical responsibility to help create a community of people who can express their natural inclinations in order to prevent them from working with the wrong program. This wrong program would be the social non-biological global setting that leads us to constantly trigger or keep active our meaningful biological programs. This trend continues to cause schizophrenic constellations such as behavioral disorders like depression, aggressiveness, autism, paranoia, anorexia, mania, etc. But luckily, Dr. Hammer was a man of science, and his work was always from an evolutionary and historical perspective and was totally independent from any moral or religious belief. His inspiration came from the ancient Germanic nature-based society. I invite you to deepen this topic for yourself or to wait for a separate video about Dr. Hammer's historical perspective on the true origin of the Germanic people, for example. I also know, as Dr. Hammer's friend, he believed that the development of morals and values must emerge after a conscious dialogue with Mother Nature, rather than from the dogmas that emerge from polarizing modern cultures. I therefore invite those who are meeting Dr. Hammer's perspective for the first time to try not to identify with any belief that goes beyond his scientific premise. If you make this effort, you'll be amply rewarded, as you will soon realize that in a society where the fundamental biological laws that rule our vital functions, like our hormone fluctuation, if these laws are ignored or disrespected, then all pretense of any agency on our body is but an illusion. No need to say that we'll always be free to make our own individual choices, but we know that the more conscious we are, the better we choose. So I hope my contribution will help put Dr. Hammer's marvelous vision into its wide-ranging context, which allows all individuals to be free to express themselves biologically. This would give people the chance of expressing all different nuances of life. To this end, we are now working to offer Dr. Hammer's original work to the English-speaking world, to give our endangered species a further opportunity to survive, not just as numbers, but as conscious human beings who can choose, if they want to live in harmony with nature. Thank you for your attention.